So, let's move on to meditation 5. Let's give a nickname to this meditation. Let's call it Material Things, Triangles, and God. Okay? It's a very strange collection of concerns that Descartes is dealing with in meditation 5, and it may not seem that the different subjects that he talks about on the face of it actually go together. You can see, well, let's take stock of where he is, of what he claims to have discovered, and where he wants to end up. Where he wants to end up, I think, is, as he says in the first paragraph, he wants to emerge from the state of doubt in which he has for some time been. That is, he started with this gesture of radical doubt, doubting everything, or trying to doubt everything, and he found that there was one thing that he could not doubt, and that was his own existence. That was impervious to doubt, that it couldn't be doubted because the very act of doubting his own existence negated itself. That is, it was, after all, he who was doubting, so he found that he could not doubt his own existence. So, according to the criterion set out, that is, that what would be certain knowledge would be undoubtable, indubitable knowledge, that he could safely say that he existed. Moreover, he discovered, when he started to meditate on himself, the nature of his own existence, that he was a thinking thing, a thinking substance, that he existed, and that his essence, what was unimaginable for him not to have, was thought, and as long as he thought, he would exist. So he knew that he existed, he knew that he was a thinking thing. What else did he discover? Well, in taking stock of his repertoire of ideas, the kind of things that he knew, he discovered that there was one idea, the idea of God, that simply could not have come from himself, an idea that implicated the existence of at least one other being besides himself, and that was this perfect being, God, whom he says he could not have thought of himself, because the very idea of God as a perfect being could not have emerged from himself, because one of the first things he recognizes about himself is his finitude, his limitations, his errors, and that the idea of God must have come from somewhere else and must have been implanted in him somehow by his creator. So the idea of God being an innate idea, that is, an idea that he simply has, that comes along with his own consciousness, this idea of God. Has he discovered anything else besides these three basic facts? Yes. From his experience of being certain of his own existence, and then the other two things, he has discovered what it's like to be right, you might say. That is, that what is it about the truth of his own existence, or that he's a thinking thing, or the existence of God, that makes it so sure and certain? It is this clear and distinct criterion. That is, all he can say is that when he knows these things, he knows them clearly and distinctly. So that can serve as a kind of criterion. Whatever he knows with, I would imagine, the same degree of clarity and distinction, if he can know anything else beyond these basic truths, then he can be said to know them as well. So it gives a kind of a criterion for whether or not we would say that we know anything else besides these things. So clarity and distinction, and he knows something else too. He knows how he goes wrong, as he explains earlier. He goes wrong when he makes judgments. That is, his ideas considered simply as subjective ideas, they do not lead into error. What the error is, in some cases, is when he grants truth to those ideas. What is he talking about? As long as I say, in my seeming perception of this object, as long as I describe my experience in purely subjective terms, I am seeing white, I am seeing black, I am seeing a circular shape, I am seeing a liquid, I'm seeing a brown substance, or we want to stay away from that word, something brown inside. As long as I describe my experience in those subjective terms, where I simply treat my ideas or sensations as subjective experiences, I cannot go wrong. Where can I go wrong? When I say, on the basis of those subjective experiences, therefore there is a cup of coffee in my hand. I know there's a cup of coffee in my hand. You know there's a cup of coffee in my hand, but we're doing philosophy here, so the obvious is not always something that we can admit. But you see where he's going, that is that the error comes on the basis of making judgments, and when we make those judgments on the basis of insufficient evidence. That is, when we make judgments, we hastily make judgments, we have an impulse, an urge to make judgments, without that experience of clarity and distinction. So he's got a lot of stuff, actually, at this point. And he does want to emerge, I would say, maybe not totally, but we'll say functionally from the state of doubt. And what is it that he really doubts right now that he doesn't want to doubt? Well, it's the existence of material objects. If he can get that back, then maybe his work will be done as far as it goes, because it would be kind of a shame to start with a common sense view of the world and then start doing philosophy where we look for the basis, the foundation of our knowledge and the foundation of a common sense view of the world. And if we couldn't get back our everyday common sense notion that we are surrounded by physical objects, that they're real and that somehow our sensations or ideas somehow really connect with things that are independent of us, it would be kind of a shame were we not able to discover that. And the last two meditations, 5 and 6, I think the most important topic is how will Descartes recover the common sense position, maybe not as it was before, but something like it. That is, that I am a being who is somehow in touch with other beings, just things outside of me. So meditation 5 is rather odd. Of the essence of material things, he says, in the title of Meditation 5. But he ends up talking not really about material things, but about math. And again of God, that he exists. And it comes back. A lot of the meditations really have to do with theology, in the sense that he's very concerned with the existence of God and the nature of God. And one of the things that he's gotten out of Meditation 4, again, is that he knows that God exists as a perfect being, and on the basis of that, that is, of God's being a perfect being, that calls into question the whole idea whether he can be deceived in a sort of total way. It's, again, it's a sort of a tension here, because he knows that he's mistaken sometimes. He knows that God is perfect. He knows that God created him. So the tension really is, why would God create him as an imperfect being, that is, a being who is often wrong? Whether he resolves that or not, you tell me, by looking at his arguments to that effect, especially in Meditation 4. But you get the sense that if God is a perfect being and God is good, and he's not the evil deceiver that is described in Meditation 1, you get the feeling that Descartes says, well, he couldn't, if he's not an evil deceiver, if he's perfectly good, maybe I can be deceived, but I couldn't be totally deceived. That is, especially about those things that I perceive clearly and distinctly. That is, the existence of a benevolent God gives Descartes epistemological confidence. That is, knowing that he was created by, and that all his faculties were created by, a perfect, loving, all-knowing being, gives him a certain confidence in those faculties. So, Meditation 5, God, triangles, and material things. Let's talk in the next little talk about